Is a wonderful discussion that we've planned on the social equity programs. Did you know that many states are smart enough and astute enough to create these programs trying to right the terrible wrongs? I am appalled. I want you to be appalled by the terrible wrongs around civil and human rights violations. Wow, that's what got me started in this crazy business. I speak all the time about this, and I know the war on drugs is a war on people. It's a war on science and a war on research. Let's stop that. So here today, some very astute, very capable domain experts to speak about this are Eugene Hillman. He's the Deputy Director of the San Francisco Office of Cannabis. Amber Center, co-founder of Supernova Women, Rodney Holcomb, legal fellow of the DPA, Khurshid Kosha, who you've met now more than once, fabulous founder of his law firm, Greenbridge, and he's on the board of the Minority Cannabis Business Association. Keith Spears, founder of Elevate Import and private equity expert, and moderated by the amazing David Abernathy of our Arcview team. Welcome.
This is an issue that I've been interested in for a long time. As someone who's both black and white, I've looked at this issue from multiple cultural perspectives and watched it as the cannabis industry has grown. It's been an issue since the beginning, since companies started making money in legal marketplaces. And it continues to be an issue today. So before we get started, I want to give each of you an opportunity to briefly introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about how you're connected to social equity in the cannabis industry.
Sure, so I'll start. Good afternoon. My name is Eugene Hillsman. I'm the Deputy Director of the San Francisco Office of Cannabis, which was recently started. Moved out here from New York City, so relatively new to cannabis regulation, but not specifically thinking about drug policy and marijuana policy specifically. So finished the PhD at Princeton. My research was on marijuana policy development from the late 70s through the mid 90s. Before that, finished a degree, essentially a master's in public policy, and worked in philanthropy for a number of years, particularly around education, but really with an emphasis on equity.
Good afternoon. My name is Amber Center. I'm a co-founder of Supernova Women, also the executive director, and also the CEO of LL Products, which is a holdings company. We produce infused products, cannabis products here in Bay Area. And Supernova Women is founded in November of 2015, and we're seen as kind of one of the architects of the equity program. We've worked with the city of Oakland, we've worked with the city of San Francisco, we've worked with LA, and we're also working with the state to help not only to just give feedback on these programs, but also help with the implementation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rodney Holcomb. I'm a lawyer with the Drug Policy Alliance, and we're a national organization that promotes drug laws that are grounded in science, compassion, health, and human rights. Over the past several decades, the Drug Policy Alliance has been instrumental in passing marijuana legalization for both personal use, or adult use, and medical use across the nation. Here recently, we were pretty instrumental in passing Prop 64 here in California, and my work at the Drug Policy Alliance has been twofold. I've been working pretty closely with state legislators to create statewide equity within the cannabis industry, and I'm also really instrumental in helping to implement something that's lesser known about Prop 64, but which is just as important, and that's the record change provisions, which allow people with prior marijuana convictions to have those cleared from their records. So that's really the bulk of my work. Before the Drug Policy Alliance, I graduated from the University of Pennsylvania Law School, and prior to that, Howard University, where I studied journalism. So happy to be here today, guys.
My name is Keith Spears. I'm also very excited to be here today. My firm is Elevate Impact. We are a social impact investment firm. Our partners have invested in excess of about $50 billion. About 500 of that was in the impact space. We're really focused on generating top quartile rates of return while also creating jobs, investing in low-middle income areas, investing with minorities and women. So we come at the cannabis space from a social impact perspective in terms of looking at health and wellness, education, job creation, investment with minorities and women, the gamut. It's the ultimate impact investment from our perspective, basically. We're fortunate enough to win a mandate with the City of Oakland. We're managing a small revolving loan program for their social equity program. There are about 600 applicants in that program, and so we're allocating a pool of capital for the City of Oakland.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Krishid Koja, and one of the many hats that I wear in the industry is as a board member of the Minority Cannabis Business Association and chair of their policy committee. We're a nationwide trade association of cannabis professionals who come from communities of color. In that capacity, I am working on a model local social equity ordinance, along with Rodney from DPA and some colleagues on the NCIA Policy Council. We're working to put together a draft local ordinance that would implement some of the best practices that are set forth in Congresswoman Barbara Lee's Respect Resolution. And these are best practices that we've discussed at the MCBA through our policy summits in the past, and so we're working to implement that legislation and create a model local ordinance that activists can pass in their own local jurisdictions and move forward with social equity programs there. In addition to that, we're also working alongside DPA on supporting the California Cannabis Collaboration and Inclusion Act, which would create the infrastructure for a statewide equity program in California.
Thanks, everyone. So I want to start this conversation off by making sure that everyone is on the same page. So Rodney, I'm wondering if you can give us a definition of what social equity means in the context of the cannabis industry.
Yeah, sure. So social equity can mean a couple of things. Well, for sure, social equity would involve allowing folks who are disproportionately impacted by cannabis prohibition a chance to enter that industry by providing them with the support necessary to do so. And that can come in the form of financial support through grants or loans. That can come in the form of technical support, regulatory compliance assistance, or simply mentorship so that they're offered the opportunities that they may have not had before to really enter this space and to excel in this growing industry. Thanks.
One of the things that we've made a really big effort to focus on at Arcview is being more inclusive of all sorts of people in the industry and in our group of investors and the companies that are on stage. And we've launched things like the Arcview Women's Investor Network. Amber, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how issues like women's inclusion do or don't interact with social equity.
Sure. So social equity is all about righting the wrongs done by the war on drugs, and diversity and including women and veterans is a totally different issue. It's more diversity. So, for instance, me. I identify as a lesbian. I'm a black woman. I'm also a veteran of the United States Coast Guard, but I do not qualify for equity, and I shouldn't because this program was designed, or these equity programs are designed to help people that have been disproportionately affected by the war on drugs, and that is not me, but I am here to help and support the equity program and carry out its mission, which is to help folks that are not as privileged as I am. So yeah, there is a very distinct difference between diversity and inclusion and social equity and social justice.
Great, thanks. So I want to open this up to anyone who has thoughts on it. There have been a lot of different programs and regulations proposed and implemented across the cannabis industry, some by nonprofits, some that are government-based. Can you give us examples of either regulations or initiatives that you feel like are particularly well-crafted, or conversely, that are particularly problematic or have unintended consequences?
I'll start. So I think one of the, I wouldn't kind of be so quick to point to a specific regulation, but one of the things that I can say for San Francisco and also places like Oakland and Los Angeles, one of the things that we've tried to at least establish a commitment to is both transparency and flexibility, right? So committing to iterate the program over time to make sure that we're improving it, to make sure that individuals who might not be able to qualify, we're having conversations with them. We're talking to the Board of Supervisors about potential gaps. We're thinking specifically about removing barriers, both for people who are looking to enter the industry, but also bureaucratic barriers in City Hall government, which we know kind of impacts everyone who's interested in starting a business, not only in San Francisco, but other places. And so the challenge, I think, is to be really strategic and thoughtful and engaging with people who are both applying to programs and also thinking about the regulatory process.
And I would just add to that I think oftentimes cities are not as thoughtful as they could be about what it takes to create a sustainable business, right? They think about a social equity program, technical assistance, maybe a loan program, but oftentimes there aren't enough resources or thoughtfulness around what is it going to really take to take an entrepreneur in a very highly regulated industry to be somewhat competitive with much larger players who have economies of scale and that type of thing. And so I think there needs to be more of an emphasis on strategic relationships. There needs to be more of an emphasis on how do we increase the size of the pie for everyone, not just a small group of people. And so I think that lack of business acumen sometimes can affect some of these programs.
And to add to that, I think many of these programs really only focus on entrepreneurs or people who want to really own in this industry, and there are tons of folks who simply want high-paying jobs, and I think a lot of the programs really miss the mark on really including those folks and offering them opportunities to be part of this industry, maybe not as owners, but just as employees. And I think more opportunities to enter that industry and more outreach is going to be required so that everyone can benefit from this growing industry.
Yeah, and I think to Rodney's point, thinking specifically about opportunities and workforce development is going to be really important for the overall growth of the industry going forward. And also thinking about how we can be really kind of transparent about what the needs are, and recognition that the population of people, even within people who believe that they meet the equity criteria, is not homogenous, right? So you have people who have experience in the cannabis industry. They have some relationships maybe with some people in this room and who are operating from a level of sophistication that's not true over the entire population. And so how we offer specific services across the continuum of individuals, even within the population of equity applicants, I think is also really important.
I'll add that I think one of the features of some of the social equity programs that I really appreciate are the ones that create incentives for non-social equity applicants to partner with social equity applicants. So for example, in Oakland, there is an opportunity to incubate a social equity applicant. And if you incubate a social equity applicant, you're committing some resources to doing that, but then you're also walking through the licensing process lockstep. And that gives you a huge advantage over other applicants, general applicants, who aren't doing that. In Oakland, if you are partnering with a social equity applicant and moving forward through the licensing process, you can get approved in a matter of days. If you don't have a social equity applicant walking through the application process with you, that you can take you months, and so that adds up. And so I like programs that create those incentives to partner, although they're not always perfect. They can be gamed as well, and that's a problem.
Indeed, yeah. I actually have started receiving calls and emails from people in various places who are looking to start cannabis businesses or get licenses, and they don't have any social equity applicants on their team. And a lot of these folks are reaching out to me to find out where can they find these people, where can they go to find people to partner with, people to bring onto their team. Can any of you?
The city of Oakland, also the city of San Francisco, hosts mixers where people, social equity applicants can meet general applicants and just network. But also organizations like mine, Supernova, we host networking events as well, where we will invite social equity applicants to come and meet people. So we do a lot of education, more the educational piece and giving people technical support, but it's also an excellent opportunity to meet people that are eager to enter the industry and are taking steps to do that.
And if you're interested specifically in San Francisco, on our website, we've actually created a form where you can tell the city about your interest in incubation. And one of the things that you can request as a part of that process is a list of verified equity applicants along with the information that they've said that they would be willing to disclose publicly, including what types of permits they're interested in and their experience in the cannabis industry. So you can just send us an email and we'll send you that information.
So one of the things that I want to make sure everyone leaves here with is an idea of how they can become involved in these efforts. Can any of you give some really concrete steps that either investors or entrepreneurs in this room who may not be social equity applicants themselves can help participate in this, things that they can do if they are looking at this panel and they're saying, wow, this is a really important issue, I want to help, I want to make sure that we have a diverse and inclusive cannabis industry, but I don't really know what I can do, where I can get started.
Well, I would love to chat with anyone in the room who's interested in partnering with a social equity applicant in Oakland or anywhere, quite frankly. And the reason for that is that I'm really focused on this from an impact perspective. We've got capital from the city of Oakland. We've already talked about the benefits in terms of the speed to market, in terms of getting a license. There's also access to capital. The city of Oakland is allocating $3 million to this effort, which, and what we're going to try to do is supplement that with other sources of capital from other impact-focused investors. So there could be a speed to market advantage, a capital raising advantage, and I think also if you're looking to expand your business, you've got a certain fixed cost clearly from a regulatory environment, taxes, whatever, to the extent you can have additional revenue across that fixed cost base that could be very helpful for your business and the returns for your investors. This is a large addressable market, as we all know. It's largely an urban market, and so to the extent you're really forward thinking about opportunities on how to expand your business, this is a great one to consider. So I think there's a lot of mutual benefits, and I think we were all here yesterday when Michael Steele was talking about the criminal justice impact and how we're trying to expand the pie, expand the market for everyone. And so as you think about how to position your business, this could be a good way to separate yourself from other players in the space. It could help you as you're thinking about regulatory issues with local government, that type of thing, to show that you're user-friendly, so to speak, with equity applicants. So there's a wide gamut of opportunities that are present for folks who are thinking about expanding the pie, so to speak.
I think there are several direct and indirect ways to really help ensure that social equity is realized. I think directly, anyone can certainly hire folks who meet the criteria for equity applicants or people who have just been disproportionately harmed by the war on drugs generally. I think also incubating these folks, incubating and giving these folks opportunities to enter the industry through either capital, mentorship, or just a host of other services so that they can get the sophistication necessary to thrive in this industry but a little bit more indirectly, simply supporting the work of organizations such as the Drug Policy Alliance, who we're certainly working at the federal and state and even local level to remove some of the barriers to entering the industry. I know one of the biggest setbacks for folks is that they just really don't have the access to capital needed to enter this industry. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that lots of folks just can't get loans from banks. There are federal banking restrictions that make it near impossible for folks to get the capital needed to start in this industry. So supporting efforts to remove those federal banking restrictions, and even here in California, there's a bill that's making its way through the legislature, I believe it's SB 930, that would create state chartered banks and credit unions so that people can safely make transactions and also get the loans needed to start these businesses. Those sorts of efforts are necessary. And another thing I think through legislation that's going to be important, and that's increasingly important, is helping to remove some of the criminal penalties that come associated with these convictions. So lots of folks, especially folks of color, have criminal convictions from marijuana offenses that have now been made legal. And so lots of these folks in places like Pennsylvania or West Virginia just aren't able to even engage in this industry because there are restrictions on who can enter it. And those restrictions often involve folks who have prior marijuana convictions, which is a tragedy, really, because I mean, now this whole regulatory framework has been created. Now folks can really enter this industry and make money, but the very people who were engaging in it just a few years ago are prohibited from entering it. So I think supporting those efforts is absolutely necessary. And I think one final point would be to support local colleges and universities that are offering supports or offering courses or offering majors, for example, for folks who want to enter this industry so that they do get the education and do get the knowledge that's necessary to successfully navigate the space.
And certainly, I think I mentioned essentially disclosing your interest in investing in social equity applicants on our website, but our office is also open. So if you would be interested in having a conversation, that would be certainly something we would be interested in.
And to follow up on Keith's remarks, I think there are a lot of issues that are win-wins, right? So, for example, for me at least, I think of licensing caps, right? Most folks who believe in free market economy want everyone to participate in the cannabis industry, don't want licensing caps. And I think that also serves communities of color and minority entrepreneurs. If there are licensing caps, that makes it that much harder. For jurisdictions that do have licensing caps, I think it makes sense for activists who are serious about moving the ball forward on this to ensure that there is a space for entrepreneurs of color to be able to participate, folks who are from communities that have been especially hard hit, that there should be some criteria to say, hey, we need to have enough licenses so that we're able to accommodate these communities and to have entrepreneurs succeed from those communities as well. I think things like delivery, for example, in California, that's a huge issue. We just had a new set of regs issued that essentially say a licensed delivery business can deliver to any jurisdiction in California. I think that's a huge win for people of color and for social equity applicants because it makes a huge swath of the market that was previously cut off open, and that's a win-win for everybody. So you can support that on the basis of social equity. You can support that on the basis of just sort of free market economics, and it makes sense from both perspectives. So I think there are a lot of those types of issues that if you identify them and you're able to advocate for them, they're a win-win that helps. I think specifically also, I mentioned the local model social equity ordinance. I would love when that is published, we're still in the drafting phase, when it's published, to have folks who are interested pick up the mantle, take that local model social equity ordinance and take that to their city council, take that to their county board of supervisors, and talk about how to implement it and how to tailor it for their specific communities.
Great. And for people who live in jurisdictions that really don't have any social equity programs and may have cannabis industries that don't look like the communities in which those businesses operate, what would you advise folks in those situations to do? Are there resources available to help them go speak to government officials? Are there organizations that would help with that?
Certainly lobby. You should totally have these conversations with your legislators, local or state. But I mean, you could certainly reach out to the Drug Policy Alliance. We're working to create more equitable industries across the nation. So that's certainly a huge component of the work that we're doing. A number of local groups too, such as the Hood Incubator, are working closely with folks who do qualify as social equity applicants. And I know they're based here in California and there are equity programs here, but similar groups are arising across the nation. I know I've seen several in Pennsylvania and elsewhere. Certainly try and connect with those folks because, I mean, they have their ear to the ground in a way that many of us don't. And they could certainly partner you with folks who can speak to the experience of being a minority trying to enter this space, and together you can form a coalition to really push for equity in jurisdictions that have yet to really implement it.
And membership in the Minority Cannabis Business Association is open to all cannabis businesses, so you don't have to be a social equity applicant to join us and to partner with us. We will put the money to good use in our advocacy, and we'd love to have more partners.
Great. I want to give each of you an opportunity to just give one closing thought, one thing that you want to everyone here to walk away with.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start. I mean, I think one of the things that I mentioned at the beginning of the kind of panel is that we're committed to improving the process over time. So I do think that this is a really important opportunity, and to figure out how we can deliver more optimal outcomes to people across the industry is going to be really important. But unfortunately, the regulatory process is not always as fast as some people expect. So just thinking about being patient and using this as an opportunity to really work together, I think can create a really robust mechanism of support for the industry.
Just wanted to say that these social equity programs are very important. Right now, we're sitting in a room with very well capitalized people that are potentially or currently making money off of cannabis, and there are a lot of people that are still sitting in jail, or if they're not sitting in jail, they've been penalized for selling cannabis, using cannabis, whatever it may be, and they're not able to participate, and that's wrong. So we owe it to people, to the community, to everyone really, to make this right, because cannabis, access to safe access to cannabis should be allowed for everyone. So yeah, and then you know, if you are not able to, if you're not a social equity applicant, which I don't assume anyone in this room is, but you can also partner with people. Like I don't qualify for equity, but I've partnered with someone that does, and so that you know, we can continue to make a difference in the community.
I think one thing to take away from this is that time is of the essence. We really have to do what we can to make sure that folks who want to enter this industry have an opportunity to do so, whether that's as an entrepreneur or as an employee. And so we have to ensure that folks of color, women, veterans, or anyone else who's been disproportionately harmed by marijuana prohibition has, you know, a chance to really thrive in this space. But in addition to that, it's also important to remember the backs upon which we stand. There are tens of thousands of people who are currently incarcerated, tens of thousands of people who currently have felony convictions, misdemeanor convictions for marijuana-related offenses, and those folks, whether they want to work in the cannabis industry or not, are having difficulty finding employment. They're having a hard time finding public housing or getting public benefits, and we have the power, I think, in this room to really change that. I mean, we are doing a lot of expungement work at the Drug Policy Alliance, and I imagine that work's going to continue to come up as states move forward with removing criminal penalties, and I think that's extraordinarily important if we want to operate in an industry that is fair, that's inclusive, and that doesn't leave folks behind.
As an impact investor, I fundamentally believe that you can generate top quartile, top decile rates of return while still having a positive impact on your community. I think that some of the issues that we're talking about today and yesterday around legalization of cannabis, social equity, health and wellness, it's all kind of related. I think as an industry, we need to take the moral high ground, and we need to take the initiative to make the case for why we need to be sustainable, socially responsible, all those important elements of our business because they're all true. And that, I think, will allow us to increase the entire pie for everyone and allow us to generate great returns for our investors.
Troy mentioned earlier the work that's still left to be done. There are a lot of folks taking victory laps thinking that the work is done. The work's not done. We're not finished yet. And I think there's great value in continuing and finishing that work. And there are opportunities to do well by doing good. So if for nothing else, I mean, if all the positive impact that we've talked about, all the good moral reasons to do this, don't appeal to you, think about the business case for it. Because there is a strong business case, not only for social equity and in terms of the examples that we talked about earlier, but there's also plenty of data that shows that diversity and inclusion generally raises the bottom line. And so think about that as well.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for being here and being on this panel.